Welcome to Spinning Back Clique. Each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. On today's episode, Jon Jones says no mas to ever fighting again. He's done. One of the MMA GOATs has laid down his gloves. All of this becoming known to us during a post-fight press conference in Baku, Azerbaijan. Lots to discuss there. Speaking of Baku, we had an event there, and judges were required for this event. Tons of decisions. We'll unpack that card. And it's fight week, not just fight week, International Fight Week. Y'all excited? Guys, huh? I don't know. And Expo, Hall of Fame, Chucky Olives versus Topuria. Let's go. But before we get started, how about a shout out to Cold Coffee, our producer. He's on the ones and twos. It is his birthday. Happy birthday, Cold Coffee. This one's for you. All right. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. Look what the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from MMA Junkie Radio. He is the co-host on the MMA Junkie Radio show. Again, in Sin City, Danny Segura down in the 305, coming to us from Miami, one of the top reporters in the game. And Nolan Keene up in Beantown, Boston, Massachusetts, another top reporter. Love when he's on the show. Folks, hit that like button to help us get started, get pushed up to the front of YouTube's live section. The algorithm, bitches. All right, fellas. We start with the biggest news of this past week. Fight results put on the shelf for now. UFC heavyweight champion Jon Jones is retired from the sport of mixed martial arts. It was confirmed by UFC president Dana White. White mentioned this during his post-fight press conference in Baku, Azerbaijan, when asked by a reporter to update us on Jones and Aspinall, right? That whole situation. It was like 3 or 4 minutes in. Just casually dropped that Jones had made a phone call the night before to share the decision with the UFC, and that's where they were at. Tom Aspinall has been now installed as the new undisputed heavyweight champion. Again, White elaborated on that. Look, there's lots to unpack here. I will scan the chat for questions and comments because I think this is a big deal. This is one of the GOATs, if not the GOAT of our sport, and it just went down so casually, and I think a lot of us are just reacting now. But the guys are going to give the initial reaction, but I want you guys to hear it, how it went down from the UFC president himself in Baku.
Jon Jones called us last night and retired. Jon Jones is officially retired. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion of the UFC.
With Tom Aspinall being an officially champ, who is the number one contender right now? Whether it's Welocome?
So International Fight Week starts Monday in Las Vegas, and Tom will be in Vegas all week with us, so we'll get together with him and figure out what's next.
That's what we got. The Michael Jordan of our sport, the Tom Brady of our sport. And it was just dropped casually like that because the reporter had asked. I'm having dinner. Ghost told me I had to walk away and just think about it. Like, wow, okay, because I thought they were going to make the fight. Nolan, how did you take the news? What was your reaction?
I mean, I think like you, I was very surprised. I was stunned, right? The setting. We spoke to Dana White in Newark after a big pay-per-view a couple weeks ago, and he was pretty adamant that everything was good. Everything was moving in the right direction. He was kind of even dropping that the fight was done and that Jon had agreed. So after kind of a very unclear press conference in Newark, which is where maybe he would say something that would make you think the fight wasn't going to happen, kind of let you down softly, right? Then we just get this dropped on us at the Azerbaijan post-fight press conference. So totally not the setting that I was expecting. Very caught off guard by it. I figured maybe Jon would be the one, as somebody that oftentimes goes to the phone before, goes to Twitter to talk about his feelings. If we would maybe hear it from him first, or he would kind of cast a shadow that this was coming. But nope, we get it from Dana. Then we get Jon confirming it, thereafter. And then obviously we get some legal news with Jon Jones getting arrested for a misdemeanor charge. So just a pretty crazy sequence of events there for one of the guy that I still believe is the GOAT of this sport, but not the best way to go out. I'm pretty disappointed we never got to see Tom and Jon fight. I felt like that was, he had talked about wanting those big fights and things that got him excited. I felt like the general public had done enough to make this a really super fight. But apparently not enough for Jon Jones, and I guess doesn't seem like we'll ever see it. So just a crazy sequence of events, but that's MMA for you.
And Nolan, when you say not enough for Jon Jones, you're not talking about the money, because all reports seem to indicate that the UFC had come through with the FU money Jon Jones was looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, man. I feel like we've heard bits and pieces from Jon, right? Like he's kind of he's made it sound like at times that he was interested, that he wasn't interested. Then it's like, is he trolling us, right? So there seems like there was a lot of money on the table. Dana White said yesterday that there was a lot of money. I don't know what he was speaking kind of in relative terms, right? I don't know what a lot of money is to Dana compared to maybe the boxing world, things like that. But I'm sure that there was money on a substantial amount of money on the table that he did turn down. So yeah, man, I'd be interested to hear when all's said and done, like Jon coming out and kind of giving his side of the story in more of an in-depth format, right? Like we saw the Nelk boys tried to ask him about it recently. He got up and left. Again, I don't know how like staged that was or how much of kind of a troll move that was, right? But I'm sure at some point in time, Jon's going to have to do a more in-depth interview and will be asked about this. So I'll be very interested to hear his answers.
If one of you three is resourceful as the show continues, if you can find what Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez are making on September 13th, I'm anxious to see where the Aspinall Jones money would be compared to that, because I'd much rather see Jones and Aspinall. And maybe I'll even try and get into it. Danny, I want to go to you next. Great job, by the way, with you and Mike Bond reacting yesterday. So I know some of these might be some fresh takes or some rehashes. No problem. Different audiences have at it. But you take us back to when you heard about this on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm with Nolan. It was a complete shock. We were working the UFC Baku event, and yeah, you just wouldn't expect such big news to be dropped in that manner and in that setting. Like, who would have known that Baku, Azerbaijan would have been the place where the news of Jon Jones retiring from the sport broke? That is crazy, especially considering that, you know, we have International Fight Week coming up. They could have easily done some sort of ceremony, some sort of package, made it special when the entire MMA world is watching and kind of pay homage to Jon Jones' career, right? So, yeah, just a very strange way to do things, but also at the same time, yes, surprising, but unsurprising. I mean, how many times have we seen the UFC kind of put the three letters of their company, UFC, in front of everything, right? And I think this just kind of speaks on it. Like, the show goes on, right, with or without Jon Jones, and what matters is that there's a UFC event coming up this weekend, and that's it. That's all like that's really being promoted. But yeah, I mean, just what a bizarre weekend,
especially on the heels of Anthony Smith about what, a month, 6 weeks ago, and everything done for him. Or I remember the Korean Zombie, Michelle Watterson, like some of them just getting that type of love. And with International Fight Week right around the corner, like one more week, we couldn't have held on to this and done something proper. Oh my God. This explains it pretty well. Richie Elger in the chat says, Jon Jones, light heavyweight GOAT. His heavyweight run was just a cherry on top, or maybe a moldy cherry. But that moldy cherry just seems to be Jones's career, man. Goes, your thoughts, man.
I'm wondering if Danny and Nolan just got out of yoga or something. They're very, very chill. I am not. I am very upset. It's bittersweet, guys. On one side, you're bummed out that you never got this payoff, right? On the other side, you're kind of happy that things can kind of get back to normal again. What that normal is, we've yet to find out. But as a fan of the sport, I'm pretty bummed out. I'm disappointed. Look, MMA was different. We fell in love with MMA because a lot of us were disgruntled boxing fans, right? And in boxing, there were so many shenanigans. The best weren't fighting the best. When they did, they weren't in their prime anymore. It was just a lot of hoops that people had to jump through. What MMA gave us was the promise that the best would fight the best all the time. When pride went away, we started to get more of that, right? But now we're getting so far away from that. Like, we don't get the payoff here. We never got Jones and Ngannou. Now we're not getting this one. We never got Fedor. There's just so many of that. And when you look at title fights from week to week, sometimes it's never the champ versus the number one guy. Sometimes it's the number 4 guy, or we're doing this guy a favor. Our sport has gotten so far from what it was a couple of years ago that it really sucks, man. Like, I wanted to see this fight. I thought it would be interesting, but I'll tell you, as time went on, I was less and less interested about the fight. But to not get it at all and to have to sit through that Stipe fight, I'm pretty pissed off. This, I think, kind of sucks, man. And I really, really hope whatever the UFC comes up with, let's just get things back in order and let's avoid these situations going forward, man. This really didn't have to happen this way.
Steve Williams shares your sentiment. He says, thank God it's over.
Yeah.
He looks like he's ready to move on. Let the heavyweight division breathe. We have a healthy heavyweight, 32 years of age, in his prime, a knockout artist, can do well on the ground. Perhaps it maybe was better for us to just move on rather than to hear, oh, it might happen in November, and then another injury sets it back a whole year. Who knows? All right, guys, quick questions for you here. Does Jon Jones return, Danny, after all this? Amanda Nunes, she's returning.
Yeah, I don't think so. It just seems he has no interest in fighting. Amanda Nunes still loved the game, but she just wanted to, have a family and kind of have some normalcy in her life and not be defending her belt all the time and fighting. And she was very active, being a champion at the time of 2 different weight classes. Jones has barely fought over the last few years, and it just seems his interest is not really in fighting. And it seems that he is pulling away from fighting, not because he's interested in other things, but because he is disinterested in MMA. So, I don't think he comes back, and I kind of hope he doesn't, because like Goes mentioned, me and Nolan look like we just came off yoga class, but really I just have a sense of relief. Like I was so done talking about Jon Jones and Aspinall and when was he going to fight. Dude, we've been at this for almost 2 years since Aspinall won the interim title in November of 2023. This is ridiculous. This was exhausting. And yeah, obviously I do care about big fights. I want to see the best fight the best, but I also just want to see fights, period. And the heavyweight division was just stalled. Like, people weren't getting fights because not much was going on at the top. It was just a mess. So even if we're not getting big fights now, at least we're getting fights. So I'm just so relieved and so happy that this whole thing's over. And if Jon Jones is going to come back, then let him come back with a fight that's signed and booked, not with teasing and holding up stuff. And I'm so done with those games. So I don't think he comes back. And but who the hell knows, right? It's Jon Jones.
Goes, you think the yoga guys need a boom boom stick to wake them up?
Oh, you guys don't know. George teased before the show that boom boom stick. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that. You sniff that and it'll wake you up. He said he'd do it during the show. So I don't know what we're going to call.
I'm kind of scared, like Jones of Aspinall. I'm kind of scared of this boom boom stick. Danny, I got to hit you back with something, though. What's all this bullshit about? Well, then Ghana would be interesting. Me and Pajeda would do great numbers. What was that shit then? Was that just adding to the bullshit for the last 6 months?
It is 100% adding to the bullshit because Francis Ngannou is not signed with the UFC. Francis Ngannou left the UFC in terrible terms and more on the UFC's part probably than his, but they don't get along. That's the point. And we know that the UFC can hold grudges and will sometimes opt out doing good business with certain fighters just because of some past history. So it was all bullshit. It was all bullshit to distract from the reality that he was the champion and he needed to unify his belt. That was his job. And it was a way to kind of put some ice on that and kind of put some water on that and not really let it spark anymore. And we just wasted 2 years, and my dog is out here barking. We just wasted 2 years of nothing. Like, it was all bullshit, George.
Look at Joseph Boza in the chat, says, what a crock of shit. I think Dana had to strip him because Tom needs his next fight booked. Plus, that new charge didn't help. Duke Mad Duck says Jon is a nice guy. Is such a nice guy that he announced his retirement so we wouldn't fight about the Baku main event snooze fest. And Shul Jubilee's gas station says, if you can get past all the steroids, favorable matchups, cheating, crime, and all the other questionable life choices, then sure, he's the GOAT. Julian Garcia, so ready for next week when MMA can fully forget about Jon Jones. It's like sayonara, man. Everyone's ready to move on from arguably the GOAT of the sport. All right. The question is, did the UFC mishandle the situation? But before you guys chime in, that was asked of Dana White as well in Baku. Here's his take.
Do I regret the time that I gave him? Listen, if you look at what he's accomplished in the sport, no, it is what it is. I obviously feel bad for Tom that he lost all that time and obviously money, but yeah, we'll make it up to him. Tom Aspinall's a good guy. He's been incredible through this whole process that we've gone through. He's been willing to do anything, fight him anywhere at any time and do this, and now he's like, I'll fight anybody. You tell me who and I'll fight him. So Aspinall's been great. He's going to be a great heavyweight champion for us, and I'm excited to work with him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they mishandled it for sure. But I want to know what you guys think, Nolan.
It's tough, man. Again, it's knowing the personalities involved, right? Knowing how Jon operates. I don't think it's a little as clear cut as maybe if this was two athletes that seem to, not present a lot of problems to the promotion throughout time. It's tough to say. I mean, this has gone on for too long. There's certainly that. The fact that really the issue was the Stipe fight, right? Like if you took that out of it, you would have gotten Tom and Jon. You would have had the interim title fight the unification bout in November, where, rather than having both fighters fight in different fights, which was a very weird scenario. So I guess kind of, again, you would have had to throw Stipe right under the bus after promising him a title shot, which would have been kind of a problem within itself. But yeah, man, it's just gone on for too long. I don't know who's at fault. Again, it's still very unclear, like who, kind of what happened there at the end. I do start to think that maybe it was Jon not giving them a straight answer, giving them one answer and flipping. So I don't know. I mean, time-wise, maybe it could have been sped up. I think before, when we talked maybe a few months ago, I said that International Fight Week was my deadline to move on. So here we are, the fight week, the weekend before, and the UFC's doing that. So definitely not ideal. Definitely a weird time in MMA history where we had two champs in the same division with titles defending them simultaneously. Hope that never happens again. But I guess for the GOAT, maybe made some exceptions there. But yeah, I'm like Danny said, I'm just super relieved that this is over. This has been too long that this has been going on.
Did the UFC mishandle the situation in your opinion?
100%. There is an intricate piece to this puzzle that's actually here with us right now, and it's Danny Segura. When Danny asked Dana, "Is this fight happen?" and Dana said, "This fight's gonna happen 100%." He gave Jon Jones all the power, and Jon Jones as a driver, not a good idea. We should have all known that. I think all of us knew that on the outside.
See what
Dana
you did there.
should have known that, dude. Yeah. I mean, look, if you invite a bull into a china shop and he wrecks shop, whose fault it is? Is it the bull or the guy that invited him in? Right? Like, this was their fault. Their job is to promote fights, put fights together. And I think they mishandled that. And, poor Tom Aspinall got caught in the crossfire. Like, we took away a good piece of his career because of all this. And he wasted Danny's time.
Stupid Danny setting this all up. No, that was Danny in Tampa in 2024. He did start all this. But, even up to a few weeks ago, Dana White seemed pretty confident that this was going down. So I don't know if this was just a late reasoning, reflection, or what from Jon Jones, because the money was there. Well, he had plenty of time to kind of enjoy, the fruits of his labor, beating a guy in his 40s who hadn't won a fight in 4 years, coming off the serious injury. Why even repair your surgery for the one fight? Like, this makes no sense. I kind of disagree with Danny. I think Jones will be back because he's going to see all this. Look at Mark England chiming in as well. Richie Elger, Steve Williams, all
George,
these guys
have you seen his mentions?
Basically being polite, but everyone's calling this guy a puss. He's gonna come back.
Everyone's been calling him a puss for over the last 2 years, and he's been enjoying it. He loves the attention. That's why he held on to the belt for such a long time without fighting a proper fight, because his brand is more valuable with UFC heavyweight champion attached, and he milked that as long as he could. And because he was the GOAT, or he is the GOAT, or I don't know how people see him, but certainly in the conversation, and certainly has done a lot for the sport, he was able to drag this out very, very long, unlike other fighters that might not have the legacy or might not carry the same level of respect. they wouldn't be able to win a belt and then in 2 years fight a guy that was retired and in his 40s and have an interim champion not only win the belt but defend it and then still no fight. And I'm sure he probably could have dragged it out longer if he wanted to. Dude, like if he comes back is a personal thing because he wants to fight. I don't think the public pressure will make him come back at all. He does not care at all. I mean, just look at his legal track record. Like, you think that guy cares about his image with all the things that he's done? I don't think so.
And he won't come back for that same bag of money he was just given. Like, that's probably out the door. Somebody in the chat room said it earlier, and I completely agree with them. Had this guy just look at light heavyweight, he did everything he could possibly do. And he said, I'm going to test myself and go up to heavyweight. That's admirable. It's not 10 pounds, guys. He's not going from featherweight to lightweight, right? You are fighting monsters at heavyweight. And he goes up and fights Cyril Gane. You look at his record. He didn't have that many fights, but still, he finished them, right? Then he fights Stipe Miocic. Nobody really wanted that, but he did handle him and he got the business done. If you just say, look, I'm getting older. I've kind of done what I wanted to do. It's time to go. We probably would have patted him on the back and applauded him. But because he said he wants to test himself against the best, he wants to go down as the greatest of all, he kind of did all this to himself. That's why when people are calling him a duck, normally you would feel bad. You would say, wait a minute, how could one of the greatest fighters on the earth, how could you even say that to him? He did it to himself. That's the problem. Had he not built all that up, we wouldn't be doing that. And on the UFC side, guys, like, in a way, you can almost point to, this has been like a giant pissing match, and it started with Francis Ngannou. This was a distraction for us to stop thinking about Francis Ngannou. The UFC put all their money in one boat, and they said, Jon Jones, that's the guy. Forget about Francis. They played right into Jon Jones' hand, man, and that's why we're here.
Same boat that was in that river in New York, man. It just sank. Richie Elger says new fans won't respect Jon. He's the light heavyweight GOAT, and there's no one close. Everyone he beat is in the Hall of Fame. Steve Williams says highest fight IQ ever, zero moral IQ, just a low quality human. Wow. It's just nuts. He is a duck, man. The Chael Sonnen years ago, for new fans, he should have taken that fight. Francis Ngannou for 3 years, and now Tom Aspinall. I'm sorry, the guy's a duck. He was great when he fought outside the cage, though. Horrible decisions all the way around. Is he still your GOAT, Danny? Real quick.
This is something that
because remember, Floyd Mayweather and Joe Calzaghe and maybe one other, Rocky Marciano, all undefeated. None of them are ever talked about as the greatest boxing ever. I mean, of course, someone might bring them up, but most of the time they're outweighed out of 100 by 99, saying other names, Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson or whoever.
I'll say this. Prior to this whole Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall holding the UFC heavyweight title hostage saga, I had Jon Jones as the GOAT. He surpassed GSP, in my opinion, the moment he won the UFC heavyweight title.
Agreed.
But since a lot has happened, that has kind of tainted his image and the way we look at him in the sport. And I don't know if it's totally fair because obviously when we talk about the GOAT, it's a lot about achievement, right? I know there's also other things that get involved, but I'll say this. I want to give myself some time to get away from this situation, be a little bit, I guess, less emotional, have my head a little bit more clear, and then kind of have an assessment on who the GOAT is. But I'll tell you this. Before this whole thing, Jones was number one. Now, I'm not too sure, but it certainly made the argument a lot closer with GSP just by the way he closed out his career compared to Jones. But
Nolan?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
How about you?
I think it's an easy one. I think he's still the GOAT. I think people have let their dislike and disdain for him and their obviously on the human side of it, when he's not a very likable person, I think a lot of people obviously don't back some of the stuff that he's done. But I think when you look at in the cage what he's accomplished, if we're talking about who is the most accomplished, best MMA fighter ever, it has to be him. I'm not saying he's the best person of all time. I'm not saying he handled his career the best. I'm not saying, the recency bias of this most recent situation shouldn't be criticized. No, I just think if you look at the whole thing, though, and what he was able to do, I think if he just retired after the Stipe fight, it would have been supremely clear. And I don't, again, he still has everything that he's accomplished up until that point. So I think in my brain, it was such an obvious answer a year ago. And I don't think even if you were to knock a little bit off of the accomplishment list because of, saying, oh, he avoided Tom or he dragged us, whatever, I still think he was up so much. He had run the score up so much in this debate that he's still the GOAT of all time.
I think you were very smart in specifying, just talking about fighting. But again, going back to Muhammad Ali, there's something about the aura of your presence in the sport. And I agree with Danny. I got to chew on this a little bit. I thought it was GSP, but when Jones matched him with another title, another weight class, I went with Jones. But now after all this, man, like, I don't know if great is defined by just inside the octagon. I guess someone would have to specifically tell me that. Or if it's just your whole career since the minute you were welcomed into the sport and how you acted and all that, and again, putting aside a lot of the stuff that got him in a lot of trouble, the allegations of steroids, whether they were picograms or nanograms or whatever, it's still all out there. Goes, how about you, man?
Man, I'm gonna have to take a Valium or something. I'm heated. Danny's right. Maybe because this is all so fresh, we will have a different take next week or when we have time to think about it. But George, my stance in boxing. And you brought up boxing, and I'll agree. To me, Floyd Mayweather is probably the best boxer of all time. But there's a difference between boxers and fighters, the way we look at the sport. To me, the best fighters of all time were Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard. Why? Because they fought everyone they were supposed to in their prime. They were anytime, any place. And that's a big deal when you're talking about fighting. In mixed martial arts, I think we've had enough history now where that can almost apply there, where you can say, tactically, a mixed martial artist, Jon Jones might have probably the GOAT. But the best fighters in mixed martial arts, I'm going to look at guys like Demetrius Johnson and GSP.
Dude, I'd have to go back. GSP didn't lose many rounds. I know that's one thing they always say about Khabib. He didn't have the title defenses, but dude, not only did he win, he rarely lost rounds. Like, that is going out there and giving someone a pummeling. And John had some really, really close ones, and he lost a lot of rounds, arguably some fights, not a real record, but in the opinion of, people, experts that cover the sports. All right. Well, I'm sure this week will kind of give us more clarity on it. Like Nolan said, there is a story in Albuquerque that's come out regarding some allegations of an arrest that took place in February. Right, guys? So when we know more about that, when we get hopefully something from Jon Jones directly, some sort of maybe a formal interview, more from Dana, we'll have different things to say. But we have to know going forward, what's next for Tom Masvidal, Nolan?
I mean, I think the most likely answer is Ciryl Gane. You can argue, I guess really there's three people in this discussion besides Tom Aspinall, right? And one of them is Ciryl Gane, one of them is Alexander Volkov, and the third one is Jailton Almeida. I think Volkov has kind of ruled himself out. I know a lot of people disagreed with the decision in December, but I do think he's kind of the last one in the running here. I think the next one is Jailton, and I think the most likely candidate is Ciryl Gane. It seems like the UFC's been interested in doing Almeida and Volkov for a while. I spoke to Jailton actually a few minutes ago before I hopped on here, and he's kind of making it sound like the Volkov fight between him and Volkov may not happen, but he's also doesn't necessarily think he's going to be next. So I think all signs are pointing towards it being Gane, particularly where the UFC announced the UFC Paris main event this morning, which does not include him. So I think it's going to be him unless there's some sort of timing issue or something like that, or an injury. I think it's pretty clear to me that Gane will be the next. I was going to say the next title challenger. I don't know if he's the next one or the first one for the interim turned undisputed champ, but that's going to be the fight, I think.
Danny, do you agree?
Yeah, but it should be Francis Ngannou, but that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, in terms of like what's possible and what's more likely, I agree with Nolan because for everything that he said. Yeah, I think the most intriguing fight there and the one that makes the most sense is probably Gane. And it's a bit of a shame because that heavyweight division is not looking too great, and I do wonder if John's wouldn't have been in the picture or would have been out of the picture a lot sooner. Like if we would have seen more fights at the top, right? Like I feel like a lot of the reason why we haven't seen Gon and we haven't seen these guys fight often is because like they kind of want to see what happens at the top and they want to have that situation figured out. So yeah, Tom Aspinall is taking over a division that it's in a very poor state right now. Hopefully in a year or two, maybe that title picture changes and we can see some interesting names. But yeah, it's looking tough out there.
Tom's kind of sort of to blame for it. He's beaten 5 of the 10 top heavyweights and smashed them all as the interim champ. But hopefully now he gets to enjoy it as the undisputed champ. And Goes, you agree, or have you gone in another direction?
I can go in another direction, but I do feel like Gon is probably the guy they go with. And there's that little storyline too, where you look at it, Tom Aspinall is probably gonna be fighting 2 people that night, Gon, and what Jon Jones did to Gon, right? You telling me he's not gonna try and beat that time, maybe try and knock him out. There's a little bit of that. What does scare me is maybe possibly the UFC feeling like they owe the fans something, or they owe Tom Aspinall something, and they just go nuclear and say, let's get Poatan up to heavyweight, enough's enough. And they do something like that for a cash grab. You can never be too shocked with what the UFC does. I think Gon restores order. It gets us back to the heavyweight division. Does it pop? Probably not, but that's what fans have been asking for, right? Make it make sense, but you never know with the UFC.
We do need a win from Poatan. Just one. Just get him some heavyweight slugger. Co-main event of Tom Aspinall defending his title, and just to give us a glimmer of hope that he can do it.
If he was still champ, I'd even entertain it, but he's coming off a loss.
Yeah,
I'm barely gonna have trouble talking about Pantoja versus Kai France because he is coming off a win, but he lost the 2 before that. So yeah, man, the UFC, it can be a clown show at times. We got to move on though. Let's talk about Baku, Azerbaijan. First time there, everyone seemed to love it. So congrats to the UFC, for going to a wrestling hotbed. Those guys are medalists, man, when it comes to wrestling in the Olympics. So let's talk about these face punching results from Baku. Not gonna lie, there weren't many big highlights in Baku. A lot of fights went to the decisions. I feel for that crowd that left the arena around 3 a.m. local time. But in the main event, let's discuss. Khalil Roundtree defeated Jamal Hill. He surgically took Hill apart, and guess what? A lot of people actually appreciated that strategy, even though it looked like Hill was there for the taking. Your thoughts, Goes, lead off here.
Yeah, I thought I was kind of in the minority here, but I actually enjoyed the way he fought. Not every fight needs to be the slobber knocker, and we saw one of those early on the night, so I think we got our fix for blood. But that's the beauty of the sport, right? Like we're not all reliant on the main event. It doesn't always have to be a bloodbath, but I thought it was very tactical. I thought the way he battered his leg, the body work, I thought was amazing. And then if you look at Jamal's face at the end, he definitely connected. So considering what happened with Poatan, and we saw that side of Khalil Roundtree, to see him kind of turn things around, come over and do this, at the end of the day, I think we could say one guy was playing checkers and the other guy was playing chess. And I kind of commend Khalil Roundtree for his strategy and the way he executed it.
All right, Nolan, did you enjoy that fight and the surgical removal of the former champ by Khalil Roundtree, who, by the way, did have to protect himself coming off that beating he took in Salt Lake City, I believe, against Alex Pereira? Was it in Salt Lake City? I can't remember, wherever it was, but that was a fight he was doing well in, but then, man, his face got mangled.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it wasn't at the top of this, like say that main event had taken place and it wasn't after a card that was a bit rough, I think maybe it wouldn't have been criticized as much. It wasn't terrible. There was some exciting moments. Roundtree dropped him a couple times, right? So good performance. I mean, he went out there and did what he needed to do. I don't think anybody had any question about who won that fight or who was in control or who was better. I know Jamal Hill was really frustrated afterwards, kind of taking it to Khalil in the cage, kind of criticizing him about not being more exciting. And Khalil was telling him, hey, you're just a difficult read. I had trouble figuring it out, which, again, you shouldn't have to defend yourself for beating somebody 50-45. But, yeah, I mean, it was kind of I liked the card going into it. I thought it was a very solid fight night on paper. It just didn't deliver. So I don't know how critical I can be of the product that was, proposed by the UFC for us to see. But, yeah, the card was not great. And I think that fight having, being the final one where most of the fans had already left after Fiziv's win, which was kind of odd as well, right? I get it. It was late. You didn't have a home country guy, but still, you'd think you sat through the whole thing. You'd stay for 25 more minutes. But yeah, not the best fight, but Khalil again showed that he has leveled up over the last year or so. He puts himself in a very good position for maybe a title eliminator or something of the sort.
Danny, were you impressed by that performance?
Yes and no. First of all, I was not to shit on Hill, but I can't believe that he thought that he won the fight. He was kind of, you see his reaction there when the scores are being announced, and he's just like, "Are you serious?"
No, let me defend him. I think what he said was 50. Like, I think he accepted the loss, but I think he thought it was closer. But I also think he was saving face by that and chatting with Roundtree. Bro, you just got beat. Like,
I scored a 50-44. I had Khalil winning every round, and one of them he got knocked down like twice, so I scored it at 10-8, and he didn't do anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. The decision was right, but I think what he meant was like 50, because that's got to be pretty embarrassing to get mopped up like that. And then now
I feel like that's when you got to be humble and take the L and learn from it. And I feel like that's kind of been his downfall. Like, ever since he started on that losing streak, in his mind, he's never lost. Oh, I was this. Oh, the referee, this, that, what, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
bro, you got outworked, you got beat, and that's okay. Like, everybody loses except, I guess, Jon Jones. Just learn from it, but don't make excuses around it. And I don't know, whatever. The point is, I didn't think that was that bad of a fight. I did feel like Khalil could have done a lot more. I felt like, Hill at some points couldn't even stand and was really hurt with some of those leg kicks. And he could have finished the fight. I leave with the sense that, like, yes, Khalil did fight better. I think we're seeing an improved version since that loss to Poatan. I think he's realized he's actually elite and he can actually hang with these guys. So on that end, it was good. He looked good. But I do feel like he could have done a little bit more. And I think if he really pushed it, he could have gone the finish. But, that you're just splitting hairs at this point. The guy went in there and had a completely dominant fight over a dangerous guy. And, he left as the winner.
What's next for Roundtree, goes?
If he can fight like this all the time, and like Danny said, maybe put your foot on the gas a little bit more when you got a wounded guy in front of you, I think he'd be a big problem. I'd love to see striking wise him and Yuri. I think it would be a fun fight.
And what's next for Hill, Nolan?
Tough to say, man. I mean, he needs to reinvent himself, right? 0-3 since losing the title in a celebrity basketball game. So it's been kind of a fall, quite the fall from grace for him. I don't know, man. You look at, would the UFC want to do him and Azamat Murzakanov, kind of have Hill take a big step back? Potentially on the flip side, Murzakanov goes out there and, he's super violent. We know what he brings. Then all of a sudden you have a new contender. So I kind of like that one. It's a fresh matchup. I guess the other option you could do, this one I like, is Dominic Reyes.
Yep.
Somebody, so either 8 or I think Murzakanov's 11. So a step back in the rankings, but still a dangerous guy where you can get another contender out of it.
I was thinking
if Rakic loses.
Because I think Rakic is coming off a loss to Yuri, right? So I was thinking him, but I like
he's
those.
He's kind of the dark horse, man, huh? He just I feel like he never gets going.
Who's that, Danny?
Guskov.
He's got a fight booked, though, I think.
Huh?
I think he's got a fight booked right now.
I don't know.
All right, let's move on to the co-main event: Fiziev versus Bahamondes. The crowd went nuts. A decision. At times I thought both guys were too busy with the reads and not enough action. I kind of wanted a slobber knocker in the last two fights to make up for all those decisions early on. People weren't even getting interviewed, guys. They were like moving to the next fight. They kept saying he'll be here in Peru. The pacing is great, yeah, because there's no interviews. They're rushing the next guy out. But anyway, Danny, lead off here. Any love for your South American in defense for Bahamondes?
I picked him to win on the MMA Junkie stat picks. I thought he would win a decision. So the fight more or less played out how I thought it would. Both very technical strikers. I thought that both would fight technical, would keep the fight technical, and both would have their moments. I did, obviously, as my pick reflects, I did think that Bahamondes would do a little bit better, and I do think that Fiziev wasn't going to do as good as he did. So I was surprised in the degree of I guess the degree of the performance of each fighter, but more or less this is what I expected. I did think the fight would go to decision. Man, great win for Fiziev. He showed some wrestling. He had a very tough fight.
Yeah.
He's Bahamondes is a very tough guy, stylistically speaking, a young guy that wanted to be there. And Fiziev hadn't won in such a long time, what, like 2022 or something like that. So, you know, it was nice to see him get a victory, especially in his hometown, and sort of have that moment. I know he's talked about dropping to 145, but look, after beating Bahamondes the way he did, I don't mind him sticking around 155. And he did call out Dan Hooker, which is a fight that very much interests me. So, yeah, great. Fiziev looked great, and hopefully they do the Hooker fight. That'd be amazing.
And goes, what about for Fiziev? What would you like to see next from him?
Well, he only loses the badasses, right? But he does take damage, man. Even in victories, he's got to shore that up. But you know, he almost needs sort of like a placeholder fight, like a Michael Chandler or someone like that. I honestly don't mind him at 155, but if he can make that cut to 145, I think he'd be an absolute badass down there.
Yeah, he's slick when he gets going and he's offensive and he's leading the dance and putting the pressure. But he does take some shots as well. The Gaethje fights definitely took a few years off him. All right, guys, another highlight from Baku, Azerbaijan. This was formerly UFC on ABC 8. Nolan, what's yours?
Yeah, I mean, Sadikov versus Moto was the highlight of the night for me. Just a tremendous fight there. If you missed it, go back and watch it. It's worth your time. I think it's one of those fights that even sometimes when you watch fights after the fact, right, you don't really feel the same way, that same level, that same wave of excitement. If you missed this one and you even know who won, go back and watch it. Just absolutely incredible. Moto landing like 70 unanswered punches on Sadikov, who then ends up stunning him, and they go back and forth, and eventually Sadikov puts him out in the second round. So fantastic fight. I know that the gave the Baku crowd something to go home feeling good about. And just one of the better fights that we've seen this year. Just tremendous action. And I was happy to see both those guys, both good dudes, get 100K out of that one. That's great.
How about you, Danny? You in agreement or you got another one for us?
I want to shout out that translator with the tux, man. Probably the fanciest guy we've ever seen at a UFC Fight Night event. I would like to shout out Orobai, man. That guy looked great, and considering the beating that he took in his last fight, sometimes those beatings change fighters, man. The way they become hesitant, the way that they just see fighting in general. And that guy went in there and took it to Tafik, who's a very tough fighter, very good for those people that haven't
ruined
seen
that debut, huh?
Yeah, ruined the debut and subbed him, man. And that submission looked mean, bro. So shouts out to him. He did miss weight, so we got to highlight that. That's probably why he didn't get the performance bonus. But man, that guy's a problem. That guy's a problem, and he's on his way up.
Pretty well rounded, but if you can make him say his name backwards, you can also get him to lose that way. How about you guys?
You know, much like the UFC did, I'm gonna double up. I thought the Mota Sadikov fight was incredible, but I do want to give some praise to the referee, because he was within his rights, man, at some point to maybe stop that fight. Nolan's right. Like, I don't know if it was 70, but it felt like 70 unanswered punches, but he read that very well, and he did a good job of keeping that fight alive and giving us this classic.
I had Mota by KO first round. So I'm watching it, right? But I also want to give the prop to the referee, because a lot of them did hit the arm.
It looked
he
bad,
did move, you know, and had he gone to the body maybe and just switched it up, maybe something through the middle, an uppercut, maybe, because sometimes it can just be the amount of blows coming your way, you're not intelligently defending yourself. So I was like, oh man, that would have been nice. Shut up, chat. Yes, I started before the ethics of journalism, so I gamble. Take that. I'm transparent about it. But anyway, man, congrats to both. They deserve their 100 grand. Those guys are studs. I'm a big fan. But I got to give some love to that Tagir Ulanbekov fight against Azat Maksum. That was fun, guys. When Tagir came out, he obviously was with Habib, right? There's this aura about those guys when they do come out. And in that part of the world, obviously they probably travel well. But that Maksum guy, man, he was tough. He actually fought off like 6 or 7 takedowns, got 3 or 4 of his own, was resilient. I'm going to keep an eye on that guy. I'm trying to give some love to the flyweights as we rebuild it after that bullshit about 5-7 years ago when they almost did away with it. It barely hung on there, but both guys were tough. Hopefully they get a little bit of a bonus. Not that I disagree with 100K for each of those other cats, but still, these guys put on a show. All right, let's move on to UFC 317. It is fight week. Finally, we close with some talk about this card that's been put together and this international fight week of events. Danny, I know you tracked Ilia Topuria for years. This is a big moment for him. His attempt to become a champ highlights international fight week. That said, start off with this though. What is your excitement level for this particular fight week?
It's weird because it's fairly high, but at the same time, because it is International Fight Week, we should hold this to like a pretty high standard. So on that end, it does fall short. But if you compare it to other pay-per-views, I do think it's one of the better ones. So I would say as of right now, it's like about an 8.
Fair.
8 out of 10.
All right. Nolan, how about you, man? We got a Hall of Fame. We got the UFC Fan Expo. I don't know if you guys saw the list, but it's a pretty impressive group that the UFC is flying in for their expo and the other events that take place around town. And obviously, it'll be a big deal to have the press conferences. I don't know if there's any additional ones that are going to happen as well. Sometimes the UFC will piggyback their own press conference for the 317 event with other announcements. That's where we thought Jon Jones might have fit in, right? Or maybe that's where Tom Aspinall will fit in. But are you psyched, man, for this week?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. You know, I'd give it a strong like 7 or so. I think the main event it's one of those cards where this is a pretty deep card, right? I think like it maybe doesn't have the supporting acts that we like to have on an international fight week. Like, you know, flyweight title fight's important, and then maybe you have a title eliminator there, the next one down. Then after that, I think there's kind of a big drop off. I would have liked to see like a strong 5 really meaningful fights, you know, main card. But the main event's great, man. I mean, it's almost one of those fights that it kind of doesn't, not that it doesn't matter what else is on the card, but like when you tune in that night, you're like, man, I'm going to see something really, really interesting in this main event, which is a huge portion of, I mean, that's what the foundation of the sport is, right? Of the interest. So I'm psyched for the main event. Good supporting acts. I like Roy Valvan, should be fun. The flyweight division will have a very big night. Yeah, it's a good card, man. No doubt about it.
You're in Las Vegas, and then you go to the Fan Expo every year. You participate in some of these events. How about you? You've been through quite a few of these. Are you psyched?
I'm with Nolan. I think I'm kind of at a 7, which is not bad, but for International Fight Week feels low, right? Because of everything that's going on. I think maybe everything that's going on in the world, the NBA finals just ended. Give me a couple days. I think I
World
might
War
get
III.
there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think emotionally we're all just drained.
I heard that. Guys, if it was Aspinall Jones, would it be a 10 all the way around?
Yeah.
Big difference.
Probably.
Huh?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Real quick, let me sneak this one in there. I did look at Crawford and Canelo. I'm hearing rumors of 100 to 150 million just for Canelo. This is a stadium show. They're expecting 60,000 people there. Crawford maybe 50 million. And Dana's the promoter. He's got to stand there, talk about these salaries. I wonder how close or not so close Aspinall Jones would have gotten. Where it definitely gets way more violent than in boxing. Sorry, boxing, not trying to disrespect you guys, but let's keep it real here. What were you saying, Danny?
That sum's not even close. Turkey did say at the press conference on Sunday that Canelo's contract is the most expensive contract in boxing history. So that sum doesn't surprise me.
It's a lot of money, dude. He's probably tipping what Aspinall would make when he goes to a restaurant,
exactly.
I think.
Danny, are you saying you don't believe he's going to make 100 to 150 million, or you don't believe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you didn't believe?
I don't believe Aspinall or Jones' purse would have been even close to that sum.
What do you think Jones would have made, guys? Anybody? 20? What was that number? That's
Probably
fuck you money. Was
30?
it 20?
Maybe 30 million.
20, 25.
Aspinall 5, 10.
Nah,
He did play ball.
5 million.
Crazy. All right. So what's the best result for Oliveira versus Topuria? And also give me your lean. Danny, back to you.
I think I'm gonna go with Topuria because there's that history with Makhachev. Also, like, this is a guy that can also, I mean, he probably won't go back down to 145, but still, I don't know. He's just new blood. He just seems to carry a level of excitement that Oliveira used to carry. I feel like he's still very beloved, but he's still part of that old guard of that Michael Chandler, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje era, which is starting to fade away. So I do think a sort of turning the page from that era would be good. So I think Topuria winning here would be the best result
for the UFC. Okay.
Yes.
Nolan, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Charles Oliveira, we've seen him win, we've seen him lose, right? He's always gonna, unless he goes on a huge skid of getting knocked out or something, I think he's somebody that's always going to maintain a certain level of interest, right? But Topuria has the ability now to really explode, be the lightweight champ, having held the featherweight title and never lost it, and being Spanish and being Georgian, representing these countries that MMA is they're trying to grow the sport in. So yeah, he's the star here. This could take him to even a newer level. Whereas I think Oliveira, a win here would be great. I think it would get people excited to see him again. But is there that opportunity for growth that Topuria has? I think that's definitely not the case. So I do pick Ilya as well. I think his skill set, styles make fights, right? We'll see what he looks like at 155 too, and not having to cut that weight. We might see some pretty scary power there. He's obviously got the speed, so I do lean with him. I think he'll get it done inside the distance, and the UFC will continue to have a skyrocketing star in their hands.
Let me push back on Nolan and Danny for just a second. It does look ideal, right? Because that guy's a star. He's undefeated. But that would also require him leaving 155 and abdicating that belt. And here we go again. And we're assuming, let's say, Makhachev can beat Della Maddalena. Like, would the UFC even want that? Like, the whole, reshuffling of champions and weight classes?
Nolan, you want
to? Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? It's we're in weird times in MMA right now where, again, you know me, super fights. I like them when a division is kind of running out of contenders, right? If one of them's running out and a second one is starting to get to that point, or if the person's earned it, if they've won a bunch in a row, then I don't mind there being kind of a divisional holdup to have a big fight happen. I mean, again, who's going to complain to see two champions fight each other, right? But at the same time, it is kind of a weird situation now, right? With I feel like doing it essentially doing it twice at the same time could create a lot of problems. If Islam goes out, he fights Jack, is he going to want to go right back down? And then you're holding up that division. And again, I like seeing, I'll never fault somebody for wanting to move up because they, weight's tough or whatever. At the same time, I like seeing the storylines play out. For us to have Ilya wins the belt and then it's oh, you just gave it up. Or Makhachev, the defending champ, oh, you just gave up the belt. I kind of hate that. So I understand the UFC was in a weird situation here. It's going to create some big fight opportunities going forward, but I do think there's something to be said about having divisional rhythm and having a storyline that I wouldn't like to see this become a thing,
Yeah, I agree, man. All right, how about you guys? What's best for the UFC and what's your early lean?
I think Topuria winning is best, but that fight I think is going to take some time to play out. If you look at the way Topuria fights, right, he's very low and compact. And you look at Oliveira and how he can use his reach, how much bigger he is, the knees that he can throw. I think it's going to take a while for Topuria to figure it out, but I think once he does, he should be able to get the job done.
All you guys are ahead of me in the stat picks, but I'm going to make one up on you guys because Oliveira is going to come out and he's going to do offensive wrestling. He's going to test Topuria on his back. And I think he can beat Topuria via the ground game, not necessarily the stand-up, unless there's an opening and he's hurt him or for whatever reason. But Charles is a lot stronger than he looks. And I'm not convinced about Topuria just yet as a lightweight, just because he brings over equity as a featherweight. Somebody wanted to chime in. I thought I saw a finger.
No, I was saying I was number one. I was saying I was number one in the staff picks, but thank you for bringing that to everybody's attention.
You the man. No, you've won it before, right, Nolan?
Yeah, it's 2023, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
Who won it last year, Fada or Kenny? Kenny's won it three
Kenny.
times, hasn't he?
Triple C.
Yeah.
Jeez, that guy. Happy birthday, Kenny, if I haven't said it. All right. Pantoja and KKF, Kai Kara France. Back to goes. What's going on here? Pantoja is great. I think he might be the greatest current champion that they have. All respect to Merab and his run, but Pantoja's been defending the belt, and that guy's just he lives in Florida. He reminds me of a hurricane that just hits you in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, how do you really sit here and say you think Pantoja loses this fight? Like, the guy hasn't really shown very many holes, and he's got a great rhythm to his career, and the pacing that he has. I think he wins this fight. I wouldn't say rather easily, but I just don't see Kai Kara France really testing him too much.
He used to get tired. He doesn't get tired. Nolan, you see an upset brewing?
I don't. No, I think Pantoja gets it done. This is kind of an interesting fight. Again, flyweight's awesome. I think we all like it, but I feel very confident that Pantoja will have his 4th successful title defense here.
Danny, are you in agreement?
Yep, Pantoja gets it done. The guy's just way too good.
Is it almost kind of an uneventful co-main event, but more because of Pantoja's greatness, not because could the UFC have done better getting an opponent?
I think the UFC could have done better, but like again, I kind of feel crazy because a lot of people have been saying like, "Oh, Kai Kara France got to be next. He's got to be next." But I'm like, on what basis? The same thing. Same kind of logic as why people said that Charles Oliveira had to be, in that vacant lightweight title fight. It's like the dude lost not that long ago. He's not even on a win streak. He only has 1 victory. Same thing could be said about Kai Kara France. I would have liked to see Manuel Cop. I know like he's had issues getting in there, but after that Asu win, I think he should have just gotten the shot. It's a fresh face. It's somebody that I feel like poses more threats than Kai Kara France to Pantoja. And I don't know. I think there would have been a lot more intrigue in that fight. And he does sell the fight a bit better, in my opinion. All respect to Pantoja, to Kai Kara France. I like him very much, but he doesn't talk as much shit as Cop does. So I think they could have done a little bit better, but either way, anyone you pick in that division, Pantoja would be the favorite going into a fight. So.
Nolan, speaking of power at 125, Joshua Van against Brandon Roy. Well, that's a fun fight that the UFC has rallied to put together late. Give us your thoughts there. And it looked like you wanted to chime in on the last thing. Go ahead and do that.
No, it goes right into it, man. Like, I think the problem here is that you need fresh matchups for Pantoja, right? Like the other guys that you could have put in this fight, in the title fight, would have been Royval and Brandon Moreno, right? But they've also both fought Pantoja and lost. So I will say, I think this is a clear-cut title eliminator to me. I mean, Josh Van, if he goes out there and wins, I mean, you got the fresh face and you got a guy that's just on an absolute tear. And then Royval obviously has been doing pretty well for himself. And if you need to book a rematch, I know Moreno's won 2 in a row as well. I just think this fight being positioned right below the title fight with one guy that's very up there in the conversation and what was supposed to be a title eliminator against Cap, against a guy that's like wanting to fight every month and is just beating the shit out of people. If he does that to Royval, I think he should get the title fight next. So to me, this should be a title eliminator, if for nothing else but the entertainment value of these 2 fights being back-to-back on Saturday.
And to be clear, isn't it Tyra that's fighting Albazi in August or something like that?
Yep.
That's
August
the other
2nd.
one that kind of matters, right? 2 guys coming off a loss, trying to rebuild. Man, pretty exciting there. Goes, we've had Joshua Van on. What do you think, man? Do you think this is too quick of a turnaround? He seemed okay with it, but you know how them camps are, the weight cuts. Them things aren't easy, and Royval is as well-rounded and experienced as they come in that division.
Yeah, they caught him seconds before he was about to really celebrate, so I'm glad they caught him at the right time. But it's a tough matchup. Look, I know Van said that he's got nothing to lose, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to take this serious. This kid really puts the time in, and I think he's a little unorthodox, and I think that might give Royval some problems. I think it'll be a really good fight.
Danny Peyton Talbot coming off his first loss of his career. He bounces back here in a matchup at UFC 317 against Lima. Who do you like in this one? Can he get the job done and get back in the win column? He's highly thought of because he's on the main card, right? Against Felipe.
Yeah. They obviously, Peyton obviously has a lot of star potential. Not only in his fighting style, but he just kind of seems to, I don't know, kind of pop from the rest of the division. But man, they gave him a tough bounce back. Like Lima is no joke. So this one's a bit tough. I do think that this primarily will be a striking fight, and we saw that that the Raoni Barcelos fight. It was the Peyton's style, really. Peyton's weakness there was really the ground. So I do think the style does kind of benefit him, but Lima's a tough dude. So I don't know. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna stay on the fence on this one. I can't give you a prediction. I want to go Talbot because that's probably where the odds are going, but man, I can't really count out Lima in this one.
Danny, let's stay with you to finish off the show. Give me another highlight from UFC 317 that everyone should keep an eye on this weekend.
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight Tracy Cortez returning against Araujo. I think this is an important fight in the division, and I want to see how she bounces back, because what happens often is that when these fighters that are undefeated or on crazy streaks, they come across a top contender, as she did with Rose Namajunas. Sometimes that kind of wakes them up. Sometimes that wakes something up inside of them to hit like a new version or a new level in their game. And I'm wondering if Tracy can do that. And obviously she is a very good looking person. She has a lot of star potential in terms of her marketability. So if she's able to sort of reach a higher level of fighting, I do think that she could be a very important player in 125. But, that's all dependent on her performances. So, yeah, we'll see what happens on Saturday.
Another highlight from Nolan King.
Yeah, I think the lightweight main card fight, Dariush and Moicano, one that's been booked before, maybe a little less meaningful than when it was supposed to happen in January, with Moicano getting totally wiped by Islam, but still a meaningful fight at 155. And then just to give a little bit more credit on the undercard, Hyder Emil versus Jose Delgado, going to be a banger. That's fireworks for two up and coming guys.
Hyder's the one from Melendez's camp, right? Scrap Hyder.
Yep. Okay. And then Delgado's out of Arizona.
Goes Auda do.
I like Hermanson Rodriguez. I think you need to put that referee on roller skates, because that fight's going to be all over the cage.
And Joker.
Yeah, but I'll say this much: if there are fights that are a snoozer, you could always just take a shot of a boom boom stick, and that should wake you up. Right, George? Show us. How does that work again?
I'll do it because Danny caught my joke. He's down in Miami. He knows where Auda do is from, right, Danny? Scarface?
Yeah, Scarface.
All right, here we go.
Little reward for those that stuck around.
It's okay, but it's not what they do in Shark Tank.
Really?
Yeah, in Shark Tank, they're all like, whoa. Maybe it hasn't hit. Do you feel refreshed, George?
I've seen George react worse to
a little bit
from our dog.
But I feel a little bit, but it wasn't that much. So I'll read it, and maybe if I misread it and I had to shake it or something. But it wasn't what they did, what they made of it in Shark Tank. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the Spinning Back Clique show every Monday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And don't forget our other video franchise, Overreaction Time, Tuesday, same time, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. This is International Fight Week, so we're going to have a lot of coverage for you throughout the week. Start by subscribing to this channel. It's free, and the content is amazing, and every day it just gets loaded with the best coverage in mixed martial arts. That's why that trophy over Goes' left shoulder, there's 5 of them in the MMA Junkie family, because we cover it as best as any outlet out there. So keep it locked, like I said, throughout the week. And Goes and I will be doing a watch along on Saturday, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you choose not to get the pay-per-view, it'll continue at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll tell you what's happening in real time. You don't have to go to Twitter and refresh or anything like that. We will tell you what's happening. Join us then. All right, folks, we are out of here. We'll see you next week when we recap all this madness from this past week. Go out and be a champion.